Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. My name is Logan Grab, and the presentation you will be viewing today is in fulfillment of the EDU 760 Program Evaluation and Strategic Planning course I am currently completing. This is going to be a presentation over the Utilization-Focused evaluation that I completed over the English Language Learners program here at McDonald County High School. Starting with an overview of the ELL program at McDonald County High School, we firmly believe that linguistically diverse students can achieve at high standards and currently serve students grade 9 through 12. Students identified as non-English proficient or limited English proficient are eligible for placement within the ELL program here at the high school, and appropriate ELL services are determined and provided by ELL staff, regular education classroom teachers, parents, counselors, and school administrators. The current ELL program at the high school serves over 150 students and is solely supported by one ELL teacher and paraprofessional. Now, we do have students receiving ELL services in regular education classrooms, and those interventions are administered by the regular classroom teacher. ELL staff collaborates with regular education staff to align curriculum goals. They offer and take part in professional learning opportunities to learn ELL strategies and modifications. There's assistance in securing interpreting and translation services when necessary, and they also assist with other needs for ELL students and their families throughout the district. Currently, ELLs take an academic English language test every year. The individual student report produced from this test shows each student's ELL scores in the 4 primary domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Scale scores are precise measures of how a student did on the test, and this test takes into account the student's grade level and the difficulty of the items that the student took while completing the test. Teachers use these scores to understand how much a student's English language skills have grown since the last time they took the academic English language test. Now, in cases where this is the first time students are taking the test, it will give that first baseline from which they have a starting point and then can take it again in the future to assess their growth. The primary intended users for this evaluation were first Angie Brewer, the head principal at McDonald County High School. She has several years of experience with curriculum development, analyzing programs, evaluating programs, and actually came from another school in the district that has multiple languages spoken within it. So her general knowledge with English language learners is quite vast. So she was an incredible individual to have as part of this evaluation. The next individual is LaDonna McLean. She is an assistant principal at McDonald County High School, and she actually spent time in the same school that Mrs. Brewer did before coming to the high school. So her background knowledge with ELL students is much more than a lot of principals that I have worked with as well. Then we have Rebecca Poland. She is the ELL teacher here at McDonald County High School. And then her paraprofessional in that classroom is Ann Parrish. And these two work very closely together to provide instruction and services for our ELL students, and then to also work with the teachers that have students in regular education classrooms. Keeping the purpose of the evaluation at the forefront of everything that I was doing throughout this process was very important. We're completing a low-stakes formative evaluation of the English Language Learners program at McDonald County High School, and the real intent there is just discovering what are the strengths and weaknesses of the program. And then another piece that is tied to that is what are areas of improvement for future growth of the program. Now, the next piece was figuring out what questions do we need to ask to get to the bottom of our findings. So we ended up devising these 5 questions, which do have different layers within them, and we surveyed students, parents, teachers, And then, of course, our principals, as I spoke about the administrators previously, as some of the primary intended users. But the nice thing whenever we did these surveys was seeing the different points of view that all of the different stakeholders had. So we're going to see each of these questions broke out in separate slides with its own specific data and a few slides after this, but this just gives us that first introduction to those questions. Do stakeholders understand the purpose of the ELL program? Do they understand how students are identified within that program? What do they know about the curriculum? What's their experience? Are they satisfied with it? That is a very interesting one, and whenever we get to that, I will talk about it a little bit more. And then whenever we get into the training and support for educators, is there adequate training? Is there enough support to meet the needs of ELL students in the classroom? And then in general, what are their perceptions of the program in regard to the strengths and weaknesses it has? Now, the evaluation methods that are held within those questions are quantitative and qualitative. So on the quantitative side of things, I collaborated with the primary intended users team to develop these, and while we did have responses like strongly agree, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree on the survey, so we did have an even number of options, there was a not applicable response provided in case some of the surveyors felt that whatever was being asked just didn't really apply to their experiences, and I thought that that was important to include. Now, on the qualitative side of things, and with the focus group as well, that is where we wanted to address the strengths and weaknesses of the ELL program, and that was provided through the survey respondents' answers, and we were able to further break down that data with the focus group. Now, moving to the actual priority evaluation results, the first question that we have is, do students, parents, teachers, and principals understand the purpose of the English Language Learners program? First group we're going to look at are the students. So do they understand the reasoning behind why they're in this program? And it was interesting to see they kind of fell on one end of the spectrum or the other. We had half of them who strongly agree that they understand why they take part in those classes, and then the other half of them responded that they strongly disagreed, that they didn't really have a clear understanding of why they were in those courses. So that is definitely something for us to look at and work on as we move forward with the program evaluation findings. When it comes to parents understanding the real purpose behind the program, their response was overwhelmingly that they strongly disagreed. 100% of parents responded in that manner. So that tells us we need to bridge some communication there and be a little bit more clear about what's going on. Teachers varied a little bit more in their responses. So we have 33.3% of them strongly agreeing that they understand the purpose behind the program, then 50% saying that they agree, and then we have 16.7% saying that they strongly disagree. And it would be very interesting, I think, to look and see, are the 16.7% of teachers who said that they strongly disagree in understanding the purpose of the ELL program, how many ELL students do they have in class on a regular basis? Because it does vary from school year to school year, but all of the teachers that did respond have had ELL students or do have ELL students in class. So there is definitely a need for a little bit more communication between the leaders of the program and the regular classroom teachers based on these responses. Now, the last group of teachers, or last group of stakeholders we are going to look at are the administrators in regard to their understanding of the purpose of the ELL program. And you have a split here. You have a strongly agree and a strongly disagree. They're split right in the middle on this one. And so I think that part of this may be due to having administrators that are relatively new to our building and new to our program here at the high school specifically, but I am definitely interested in delving into that more. I was actually very surprised to see that on this particular piece of the survey. So definitely gave the focus group some more information to break down and analyze. Now, moving on to priority evaluation question 2, do students, parents, teachers, and principals understand how students are identified for the English language learners program? So now we're looking at how do we decide if a student is eligible for the program? So whenever we're looking at students, do they have an understanding of how they were identified for the program itself? And they actually responded very similarly. You have 50% of them saying that they strongly agree, and then 50% of them saying that they agree. So there is definitely an awareness of how they were identified for the program. And it was good to see that students did understand that. Now, whenever it comes to parents, and I think this is very tied to that first question, that was asked about understanding the purpose of the program. Do parents understand how their children are identified for the ELL program? And overwhelmingly, again, they disagreed. And that definitely points to there being a bit of a breakdown in communication. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that there's fault to place on anyone, but it may come back to some of the things I experienced with, even though I maybe if I send a survey home with a student for their parent to fill out in their native language that they speak, there may be some issues whenever it comes to literacy of them being able to read the actual survey. So that is something that we are definitely delving into to see how we can better approach the communication methods that we do have with parents of ELL students. Whenever it comes to teachers, very much on the same page again with how students are identified for the ELL program. Half of them agreed, half of them strongly agreed, and that was definitely a good sign since those are the people working with those students. And then our administrators, all of them strongly agreed that they understood what the identification process was for our ELL students. Now moving on to priority evaluation question 3. This one is, are students, parents, teachers, and principals satisfied with English language learners program curriculum? And that means, are they happy with what's going on within the program in regards to curriculum? Students responded either agree or strongly agree that they felt like it was beneficial to them what they were doing in their classes. Whenever it comes to parents, they also agreed. Nobody strongly agreed, but 100% of them did agree that they thought that the curriculum was adequate. Now, it takes a turn whenever we get to teachers on this, simply because I think their perspective is very different. They're the people that are in the classroom working with the curriculum. So we have 16.7% saying they strongly agree that the curriculum is something they're satisfied with. 50% said they agree, but then we do see this 33.3% saying that there is not a complete satisfaction with the curriculum. So that was definitely something to take note of through the survey. And then we have a split on our principals as well with our administrators. So 50% of them said that they agreed that they were satisfied with the curriculum, but then the other 50% said they were not, and really trying to figure out between the teachers and the administrators, what are those pitfalls so maybe we can remedy the issues that they are seeing in the curriculum. The fourth priority evaluation question is based on student, parent, teacher, and principal perceptions. Is there adequate training and or support for educators in regard to meeting the needs of ELL students in their classrooms? So whenever we first look at that for students, that means, do my teachers seem prepared to teach me, is really what does that mean? And between all of the respondents that we had from the student group, agree and strongly agree are what all of them responded. So in terms of how are students perceiving the instruction of their teachers, that was definitely positive. And then we also had a positive response with parents saying 100% of them were in agreement. Now, teachers, again, vary whenever we get to this category, this question. And I think that their response on this is very important because they are the people, like I said before, working with these students on a daily basis. So we didn't have anybody that strongly agreed, and a very small percentage, 16.7, said that they actually agreed that there was enough training and support for educators that have ELL students and when they're trying to meet those needs. And we did have the same non-applicable percentage, 16.7. So a small group of the teachers, they just didn't really feel like that applied to them. But the majority of our teachers, 50%, said they disagreed that there was enough support, and then 16.7 strongly disagreed in there being enough training and support. So this was something that became very useful for me and the primary intended users team, and really just moving forward with some planning and development for the ELL program. This is not something that has been surveyed before, not at least in the last couple of decades, and so this was absolutely critical information that we needed. Administrators, 100% of them disagree that there is enough support and adequate training for the educators meeting the needs of ELL students in their classrooms. And I think that this was, you don't want to see that there's a lack of support, but whenever we see that our administrators and teachers are predominantly on the same page with their responses to this question, I think that we can see that there's going to be a good partnership there of moving forward to make improvements that are needed with the program. Now, the last priority evaluation question, question 5, is where we break down those strengths and weaknesses. So based on those student, parent, teacher, and principal perceptions, what are the ELL program strengths and weaknesses? Now, there were several different responses within those questions, but really whenever you boil down the gist of what each one of those strengths and weaknesses from those stakeholders communicated, it was very evident that there were a few key points that everybody consistently repeated. First, for the strengths, you have the program has a very strong foundation. The program has been in existence for several years. It is not a new program, so it does have a solid base. There is an incredibly committed and compassionate group of educators who make up the ELL program, and I'm going to even extend that out into our regular education classroom teachers because they're working with them. You couldn't find somewhere that cares any more about students at McDonald County High School. And I know there's a lot of great schools out there, but we just have such an amazing group of people here that want to always serve students in the best way possible. And in conjunction with that, we do have curriculum for ELL students that is in place. So these are definitely some of the key strengths of the program. Now, turning to some of the weaknesses, and this is something that I consistently communicated throughout this presentation, and I'm sure, most people, very easy for them to pick up on. The ELL program is severely understaffed whenever you're looking at the number of students who need ELL service provided to them. So that is definitely something for us to look at going forward, and I'll talk about that more in the recommendations. There definitely needs to be more communication and training that happens between the regular education classroom teacher and ELL teachers, and potentially trainings even outside of the walls of the school. But we have a lot of very intelligent, highly qualified people in our school that we could probably provide a lot of that professional development within the walls of McDonald County High School. And then lastly, more communication with ELL students and their parents is needed. So there seems to be a better understanding of the program and everything that it offers with the ELL students, but there's definitely a bit of a pitfall whenever it comes to their parents. So we definitely need to be intentional about looking at that being an improvement area going forward. So speaking of improvement, recommendations were made based on the evaluation discoveries. And the first recommendation is, the English Language Learners Program will work on the explanation of the ELL program in regard to students, parents, teachers, and administrators. Make sure that everybody understands a full scope overview what the ELL program is. And that is going to include, but is not limited to, a general overview of the program, how students are placed in the program, and how all stakeholders can be involved with the students within the program. So within this, the norms and expectations of the ELL program will also be communicated. And I know there's a lot of pieces within that. And, if the slide said one word on it, it would just be communication. And so that is definitely a very strong recommendation being made. The next recommendation is looking at the opportunities for teachers to learn how to best serve the English language learners in their classroom. This is going to require teachers attending professional development and potentially working more closely with the ELL teachers and paraprofessionals at McDonald County High School. And then developing a plan for future years of instruction is what the third recommendation is based on. And this is in regard to the staff to student ratio currently in place. So based on the data collected through the surveys and the focus group interviews, the English language learners program is grossly understaffed and will require more highly qualified teachers to fully meet the needs of all students in the program. So going back to the beginning of the presentation, we talked about Mrs. Pullen and Ms. Parrish. They are the only two individuals that work in the ELL exclusive classroom. And then, of course, we have several students in mainstream classrooms. Based on the recommendations, I think that people would definitely like to see the number of ELL specific teachers go up to at least 2 in our school. And honestly, that's one of the things that we're going to be working on as I continue following up with the recommendations that have been made, because the teachers and administrators at McDonald County High School definitely see a need now. And with students being the individuals that need is the basis of, they want to make sure that they're meeting those needs, especially during a time where things are much different in a lot of ways than they happened in the past due to the pandemic and the different methods of instruction, and just making sure that we're being intentional about serving our English language learners is a high priority. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you for being here for it today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you were able to gain some valuable pieces of knowledge out of it. And I have to say, I am excited to continue working with the ELL program at McDonald County High School, and I look forward to the program's future growth. Thank you. Goodbye.